Hello, everyone. We are Major Win, and
We have hired a virtual assistant.
we have hired a virtual assistant. So, we wanted to share. We are part of several different reselling communities, and we had started to share with the group the fact that we use a virtual assistant. And we kept getting questions consistently about what that experience was like, how we even found our virtual assistant, what the payment structure was, how they set up listings for us. So, a variety of different questions about what that experience has been using that VA. And we'll use the term VA for virtual assistant as we go through our key points today. But we're going to do our best to highlight all of the advantages and disadvantages and kind of sum up what that experience has been like in as straightforward of a video as we can with you today. So, one of the first questions that we want to really address is how did we even make the decision that a virtual assistant would be a right fit for our reselling business? And for that, I'll hand it off to Ro, who will talk about how we made that decision.
So it was something that we had debated about for months. We've obviously heard of virtual assistants. We did have some concerns. We weren't exactly sure how to go about it, but it was one of those things where we were interested in the next step for our business. We knew that we wanted our business to grow, but we weren't in a position where we felt comfortable yet hiring somebody on site. We just aren't really quite ready for that. So, but we knew we definitely needed some assistance in growing. So, one of the things that we had talked about is trying a virtual assistant, just seeing if it could possibly be something that really would be beneficial for us.
Yeah, and so we began the process. We started to seek out additional information, much like you might be doing right now, to see what others' experience has been like using a virtual assistant from their side. And what's been really nice is you see that when individuals are using a virtual assistant, they actually use them for a whole variety of different tasks that are beneficial for their business. And so for us with reselling in particular, we had to start asking some questions about how they would really be beneficial for what our needs are. And one of the biggest ways that we observed is in assistance with creating listings, because we are consistent about our photographs, we're consistent about listing, we're consistent about shipping. But with those listings that we're doing, that was for us a big part of the process that was exhausting. It wasn't our favorite aspect of doing reselling. And it's something that started to be a bottleneck for us when we're trying to really be productive with our reselling. And so once we made that decision that a virtual assistant was something that we wanted to try to assist us with that, the next big question was, how do you find one? Where do you go to be able to find that virtual assistant? And then how do you make sure that they're going to actually be a right fit for that need that you're trying to address? And so we did a lot of research to find the best company that we could that would be able to assist us with a virtual assistant. And so after a while, Ro was the one that started to zero in on Upwork as the company that really seemed to be very reliable, that they produce good results, but also too that they're one that you can trust, that they're a company that really has a lot of consistency and a lot of experience in this industry. And so, Ro, once you started to zero in on Upwork, what was the process like for actually finding a virtual assistant that was available from Upwork? And just a
Yeah, I
reminder
was going to
too,
say, we want to be clear, this is not sponsored by Upwork at all.
this is not a sponsored video by Upwork at all.
No.
But wherever we're using them, we just want to make sure that that's clear.
Yeah. So when we were doing research, we watched quite a few different videos of people talking about their personal experiences. There's obviously quite a few different companies that you can use that do offer the assistance of helping connect you to a virtual assistant. One of those companies that I had heard multiple good experiences with was Upwork. So that is why we chose to go with Upwork. And like I said, it's not sponsored. But so the process for it was pretty easy. Even when you go online, creating an account, extremely easy. I would say all this could be done in 15 minutes. So we went online, we created an account. We told them specifically what we wanted our virtual assistant to do for us. We put on there that we wanted someone that was an expert in creating eBay. I was trying to say something else. eBay, Poshmark, and Etsy listings, because those are the three platforms that we are predominantly interested in and have stores accounts with. So we kind of really wanted someone that would be very comfortable with all three platforms. Then after we did that, we put in specific things that we wanted them to be comfortable with. And like when we say you can hire a virtual assistant to do anything, you can hire a virtual assistant to do pretty much anything. So, I mean, it's really fantastic for the options that they have. Once you put in what you're looking for, within minutes, I had quite a few applications of people that offered the exact things that I was looking for. A lot of them actually had things that I hadn't even thought of as skills. So that was pretty convenient. We kind of zeroed in on a couple of profiles that really looked the best for us. We reached out, we contacted them, and then with the main one that we use, we set up like an interview with them, and everything that we were concerned about or anything, we had talked to him. He showed us other accounts that he'd worked on, so we were able to see his history. He reviewed one of our stores, told us some things that he liked or saw about it. And then he also offered that he could give us some sample listings to just kind of give us an idea of what type of work he could do and the type of research, the specialties that he had to offer.
And so, as Ro mentioned, when we started to zero in on a particular virtual assistant that we thought that the work seemed good, that he had a lot of the different abilities that we're looking for a virtual assistant, he offered us a couple different ways that we were able to go ahead and kind of test out to make sure that it was a good fit.
Yeah.
One was that virtual interview, like Ro had mentioned, but also two, he offered us a sample contract where he would do a certain amount of listings for us, and we could see if the results fit the bill for what we needed. And we tried both of those different ways. Of the live interview went extremely well, and then once we did a sample of the listings, all of those came out in really high quality as well. So both of those things, once we got those results, we were confident that we could move forward and that this virtual assistant was the right fit for us. And so far, I'd say that that's proven to be the case, wouldn't you, for all the results we've been getting?
Mm-hmm.
So it's been nice that if you look at the process, once you start to work with a virtual assistant directly, what you do is you establish a contract where there's a certain expectation of work. Once that work is completed and the contract is ready to close, the individual that hires the virtual assistant will close that contract, and the money from that work goes right to the virtual assistant. Now, depending on the different platforms that are offering virtual assistants, they will also go ahead and take a certain cut of that as well. That is going to be their pay that they receive. So they'll get effectively a certain percentage of the job.
Yeah, it's a very small percentage of whatever the negotiated rate is. It's between like 3 and 5%. So it's the cost that we pay for the actual service. I think it's very reasonable.
And so let's talk now briefly about what we're actually paying for our virtual assistant, at least at the time of this recording.
Yeah.
So when we started to contract with our virtual assistant, he offered us two different ways that work could be accomplished and that he would then ultimately be compensated. The first way was through the use of an hourly wage. So he would say, I'll work for you for a certain amount of hours, and each hour will cost this amount of money. And so he had offered us $5 an hour for his services. Now, on the flip side, he said, or what we could do is we could go by the listing. And so by the listing, he was saying, I'll do each listing for you, and we'll just call it 75 cents a listing, and that'll just be the fee per listing. So it's been actually interesting as we shared this point with different ones that were interested in virtual assistant. It's been fascinating seeing which ones would choose the hourly rate versus which ones would choose the by the listing rate.
Yeah.
And certainly more have said that they would opt for the by the hour, or excuse me, rather the opposite, by the listing rate, because then you can get each unit of work accomplished and you know exactly per 75 cents how many listings you're going to have.
Yeah. So for our contracts, we do tell him a certain amount that we want every week. And then obviously we just know exactly how much the cost will be. But the one benefit that Upwork has as well is if you wanted to choose a VA from the United States, you of course could do that. The cost of living in the United States is a little bit higher, so the hourly rate that they're charging will obviously be a little higher. You can choose to select options from around the world. So you can pick a VA that does not live in the United States, in which case their cost of living may be substantially lower and their hourly rate will also be lower. If you are paying an hourly rate, because there are some jobs that you might be hiring that, for instance, are not listings, you can pay the hourly rate. The really cool thing that Upwork does offer is there's a lot of security in what your VA is doing during that time. For instance, one of the things that they offer, which we don't take advantage of because we pay per listing, but for instance, randomly every 10 minutes, you can get a screenshot of what is on your VA's screen, kind of giving you an idea that you can see exactly what they're working on at that time. There's lots of little things. There's a whole time log that they have to fill out, and they'll let you know exactly what they're doing throughout the day. And supposedly the transparency is very clear and easy to follow. We don't use that route because, like I said, we pay per listing. But just so that you know, those are some guarantees that you have to really show what you are paying for and to make sure that your time is being accounted for. He also did let us know typically how many listings he can do an hour, which gave us a kind of an idea of what his roughly listing rate would be anyways. For us, we just felt more comfortable with the listing rate.
And so between the two of us, we've created thousands of listings on various reselling platforms. But for us, when we hired our virtual assistant, our combined total was about the same as our virtual assistant that we're hiring.
Yeah.
But what we found is as he's creating listings, there were so many different details that he included that were things that we hadn't yet even were figured out to include. And so it was really nice that we learned so much about search engine optimization and how we could really refine our descriptions to be more beneficial and really more efficient for each listing. And so it's been really beneficial that not only has he assisted us with the creation of the listings, which is work off of our plate, but also in regards to our own personal skills, he's taught us a lot. That's really benefited us that we're going to keep moving forward.
And there's a few things with listings that I kind of hate doing. For instance, putting style codes on Poshmark listings. They really like those style codes in there, and I hate putting them in there. And he just does it for me, which is really nice.
Yeah. And the communication has been very good back and forth. Certainly, you're all involved. We're all human. We make mistakes. There's been typos that our virtual assistant has left in. There's things that we on our side have refined for how we communicate. So it is a little bit of a learning process as well. So if you're going to hire a virtual assistant, one recommendation that we would have is just be patient with the process, especially in the first few weeks. That keep into account the fact that there's going to be that refinement period where you're really getting used to working with this new individual that's assisting you with your business.
But one thing that I would also add to that is it is something that I feel because he is not the one that launches the listings live. I do. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But because like we've talked about, we're not infallible. We'll make mistakes on listings. So the fact that his eyes are on it, he's created the bulk of it, he's created everything. And then I just kind of go in there, double check it all, sometimes make slight tweaks, especially sometimes like with shipping. But I feel so much more confident when I hit list live that I know that that's a really good listing because multiple eyes have been on it. Not just my opinion, somebody else. And it does help you feel much more confident about that listing.
Yeah, and so you mentioned also too what the listing process actually looks like. And so that's the next area that we want to make sure we share, and that's very clear. So when it comes to the actual listing creation, so what does that process look like with a virtual assistant? First off, it begins with the pictures. So once we take the pictures, we will do all that we can to make sure that we catch every angle of the item that we're looking to list. But then inevitably, especially for us, we deal with a lot of very used goods. You'll have details that need to be included, such as specialty features of the garment that you're looking at, or really whatever item. But then also, too, there's going to be defects. What if the garment has a hole? What if it has a stain? What if it's got a snag? And so one thing that you'll work with your virtual assistant to be clear on is how will you communicate specific details of each item so that they know that it's included very clearly in the listing. And so different ways that we do that with our virtual assistant is one, we'll just use our finger to go ahead and point at a defect that's found on the garment to really clearly highlight it. And then he'll look for those pictures, and he knows that if we've got any pictures that we send to him where we're specifically pointing something out, it's something that is unusual that needs to be highlighted for that particular item. Also, if the details might be a little bit more complex and we need to make sure that they're very clear, we'll also just drop him a note directly and make sure that that's well understood, that that's something that's unusual with that particular item.
And this is something that doesn't need to take too much time. Typically, what we'll do is we'll open a note in our phone, we'll type out a quick message saying whatever the defect is, take a screenshot, and then that's just included with the rest of the pictures for the item. And he has it right there. He just copies and pastes and puts it right into the listing.
Yeah, and so you might be hearing a lot of these details and saying to yourself, well, if I'm
in
going
that time,
yeah, in that amount of time, couldn't I just go ahead and create the listing myself? And so that's a question we will frequently ask ourselves, because we want to make sure that every dollar that we spend really does count. And we don't have unlimited resources. We've got to make sure that everything that we're spending money on is really a good fit and that's truly beneficial for the business.
Yeah.
And so with us, a couple of the key advantages that we keep running into is, one aspect is definitely the learning from our virtual assistant, where we are gaining new knowledge that's certainly worth 75 cents a listing just on its own. But also too, the extra detail that he's including is something that it would be exhaustive for us to include, but it's something that as he takes a minute, does a little extra research on an item, that really is beneficial for what he's including. So our learning, the detail is more clear. And then there's a third aspect to it that's really beneficial, and really that's worth far more than 75 cents a listing for us. And that is having somebody outside of your business that you're technically accountable to. And we found with that, and I'll let Ro explain it a little bit further, but we found that for us, we needed a little extra boost to make sure that we stayed on track with getting all of our listings consistently done. Have you found that to be the case, Ro?
Well, yeah. So especially our assistant, he works 6 days a week, which is it's nice because we're cranking out a lot more listings than we used to. But it does definitely give us that accountability when we realize he needs a certain amount of listings photographed every single week. And if we're being lazy that week, it's one of those things, no, you don't have an option. You have a contract. You have to get those pictures out to him, which is really nice, because one of the things that I absolutely love is every morning waking up and all of those listings are just done. It almost feels like I was working while I was asleep. So it's really nice. It's that consistency. Every morning I get my cup of coffee, open up my computer, and I can just go through listings and launch them out live.
Yeah. So appreciate you highlighting that. And so that extra layer of accountability for us has been super beneficial, and it's definitely paid dividends in regards to our results and what we're able to achieve.
Yeah.
And so just knowing too, like Ro had mentioned, the fact that we hand it off as we go to sleep, he works where he's at through the night, and then by the following morning, we have those listings prepared.
Yeah.
It's really, I think, I can't speak for you, but at least for me, it was really a surprise how really beneficial that was, and also encouraging to then start that process over again the next day.
Yeah. No, and one of the things we were talking about originally, because I know a lot of people can be concerned about like security, giving someone access to their accounts can be a little intimidating at first. And I do know that eBay definitely has some things where they can lock down certain amounts of what a virtual assistant can have access to. We did like the idea at first of having someone on the other side of the world working, because we liked the idea originally of having eBay see activity on our account almost 24/7. That was very appealing to us. We thought that it would really help our store. What we've chosen to do though is we do use Vendoo, and we've given him access to our Vendoo account so that he creates the listing in Vendoo, and then he sets up all the specifications for Etsy and Poshmark and eBay separately. That's kind of why we chose to go that way. And then, like I said, in the morning, I just launched them live. So you do have options as far as how you wanted to do that. But with Vendoo, it was pretty nice because there's only so much access that they have. And then secondly, because I would go in there and put all of our listings in Vendoo anyways and change them for each platform. But he's already doing it for me. So it's, once again, one less thing I have to worry about.
Yeah, and so you actually touched on a point too that's really important. Is okay, you're in the process and you're trying to send your photos to your virtual assistant. Well, how does he get that information before he logs into the program, and what does that even look like? And so, as Rohit highlighted, as we look at the process from start to finish, starts with us taking the photos, or really, if you're going to go way back, it starts with us picking the item, making sure that it's in clean condition. Then we take the photos. Once we have the photos, we put them in their own unique folder by each item. And in that folder, we'll include all of the pictures for that item. And we'll also number them so that our virtual assistant knows that we've got our total number of items very easily able to be seen there in his folder. So we've got an overall folder for the virtual assistant. Below that, each item has its own folder. And then in that folder contains all of the images for each item.
Yeah.
And we also
makes it easy for all of us.
Yeah. And so we also then gave him his own special login for our reselling programs, just to make sure that he has his own login, and it makes it a little bit easier for us to track, to make sure we see what he's accessing. And so as we look to kind of summarize the experience of a virtual assistant, what do you think have been really the highlights of the experience so far?
So the highlights are definitely the accountability that we have. We are producing more listings than we have in ages. Our store is reflecting that, which that's really nice. So the accountability is definitely one of those benefits. And like I said, I just love having my morning coffee and just seeing all those listings already done for me.
Right. Yeah, and there's definitely been a few drawbacks as well. There's a little bit of an ability for miscommunications to occur, as with anything that you're trying to communicate with anybody outside of your own head. Sometimes that could really
anytime you hire help, you're going to have a little few miscommunications here and there.
Exactly. But overall, it's really been a nice back and forth. We certainly have tons of gratitude for our virtual assistant. At this point, we're feeling like we couldn't continue to build or grow without him.
Yeah, and we've talked about getting more assistants as well. And then did you want to mention also about the accountability on the website for both partners?
So yeah, for how the contract then is resolved, so where you actually have the final payment that goes out to your virtual assistant, one of the first things that happens is the work is completed, and the virtual assistant will let us know that the work is done. Then we go in, we review the results of that, and as long as it meets all the work criteria, then we go ahead and we close out the contract, and the payment goes right to the virtual assistant.
Yeah, you release the funds after you're obviously content with the work and the contract has been fulfilled.
And so once that happens as well, for that contract, both sides, for us, the one that have asked for the virtual assistants, and also the virtual assistant themselves, will have the opportunity to provide feedback that's posted regarding what the experience was like working back and forth. And so it really gives an incentive for both sides to have a really positive and productive experience.
Yeah.
So if you'd like more information regarding working with a virtual assistant, or if there's anything that we haven't covered that you'd like more information on, let us know down in the comments. And if there's any part of this video that you found beneficial, please consider liking and subscribing. We'd love to see you as we consider other valuable topics that relate to reselling.
Yeah, and if you guys want a second additional video, we can do that. Or if you just have a couple of questions, we'll try to answer them in the comments as well.
Yeah. Thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. It's been a real delight being able to talk about this wonderful experience we've had with the virtual assistant.
Yeah, we hope it's helpful for you.
Yep, and we look forward to seeing you on the next one. Take care.
Bye.